In 2016, an 87-year-old man was lying in a hospital bed in Vancouver with electrodes glued to his scalp. He had epilepsy. He had fallen, and the fall had caused a bleed in his brain, and the doctors needed to see his seizures. So they wired him to an EEG and left the machine running. Then, without warning, he had a heart attack, and the machine was still on. It recorded the last 30 seconds of his life and the 30 seconds after that. Nothing like this had ever happened before. You cannot plan an experiment like this. No ethics board on Earth would ever approve it. In the entire history of medicine, nobody had ever accidentally captured a human brain in the act of dying. What was on that recording is not what anyone expected, and it is far stranger than a light at the end of a tunnel. To understand what was on that tape, you first need to understand what dying actually is, because it is not a moment, it is a process. When your heart stops, nothing dramatic happens right away. Your brain is still fully intact. It is simply cut off. No blood, no oxygen, no glucose. Your brain is about 2% of your body weight, and it burns 20% of your energy. It is the most expensive organ you own, and it keeps no reserves. It runs on a delivery schedule. When the delivery stops, the clock starts. You have roughly 10 seconds of oxygen left in your head. That is why people faint before they die, and why a fighter goes limp in a chokehold in under 15 seconds. Your brain is the first thing to notice, and the first thing to go. But going is not the same as being gone. The cells are still alive. The wiring is still intact. For minutes after the heart has stopped, the machinery is all still there. It is simply running without fuel. For most of medical history, everyone assumed what came next was obvious. The power goes out, the signal flattens, the brain fades, quietly, like a radio losing its station. In 2009, a critical care doctor named Lakhmir Chawla noticed that this was not what he was seeing. Chawla worked at George Washington University. He had been watching monitors on dying patients whose families had agreed to withdraw life support. He kept noticing something in the data that nobody talked about. After the blood pressure dropped to zero, after the heart had stopped, somewhere between 30 seconds and 3 minutes later, the brain spiked. A sudden burst of electrical activity, sometimes lasting minutes, in a brain that had no blood flowing through it at all. Chawla saw it in patient after patient. He called it the end-of-life electrical surge. The brain does not fade out, it flares. But a surge is one thing. A surge only tells you that the lights came on. It does not tell you what the brain was doing. Which brings us back to Vancouver. The recording from that hospital room sat in a dataset for 6 years. Then, a team led by Raul Vicente and a neurosurgeon named Ajmal Zemar went back and looked at it properly. They published in 2022 in a journal called Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience. They had 900 seconds of EEG surrounding the moment of death. 15 minutes of a human brain on either side of the line. They went to the 30 seconds before the heart stopped and the 30 seconds after, and they found a surge in something called gamma. Now, gamma matters. Your brain runs at different frequencies for different jobs. Slow waves for deep sleep, alpha for rest. Gamma is the fast one. And gamma is not noise. Gamma is the rhythm your brain produces during a very specific set of tasks: dreaming, meditation, concentration, and memory retrieval. Gamma is the signature your brain makes when it reaches back and pulls something out of the past. In the last 30 seconds of that man's life, and for 30 seconds after his heart had already stopped, his brain produced the exact electrical rhythm it makes when it is remembering something. Now, here is where it turns over. This was not the first time anyone had seen it. It was only the first time in a human. 9 years earlier, in 2013, a neuroscientist at the University of Michigan named Jimo Borjigin published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. She had been recording the brains of rats. Then she induced cardiac arrest. For 30 seconds after the heart stopped, the rat brains did not go quiet. They lit up. Gamma activity surged. And here is the part that stopped people cold. It surged higher than when the rats were fully awake, more organized, more synchronized, more coordinated than a normal conscious brain. This is not a machine winding down. Borjigin's rats were doing something in those 30 seconds that they never did while alive. She wrote that the dying brain may be, briefly, in a state of heightened conscious processing. Think about how strange that is. Take a system, cut off its power, and it does not slow down. It speeds up. It gets more organized than it ever was with the power on. Borjigin's argument was simple. If the brain of a dying animal is more coordinated, more synchronized, and more active than the brain of a waking one, then the assumption that dying is a fade is not just incomplete, it is backwards. She published that in 2013. Almost nobody listened. And then, 9 years later, on a different continent, in a different species, in a hospital bed in Vancouver, a machine that nobody meant to leave running found the same thing. Now, I want to be very careful here, because this is where it would be easy to lie to you. That Vancouver recording is a sample size of one man, and not a healthy one. He had a traumatic brain injury, he had swelling, he had bleeding, he was on anti-seizure medication. Any one of those things could have shaped what that EEG picked up. You cannot build a theory of human death on a single damaged brain, and gamma oscillations do not prove experience. A rhythm is not a thought. The brain can produce the electrical pattern of memory without anyone being home to remember anything. Zimar, the man who ran the study, said this himself. He was explicit that the life flashing before your eyes reading is an interpretation, not a finding. The same caution applies to near-death experiences. The cardiologist Sam Parnia ran the largest study ever attempted on this. It was called AWARE, over 2,000 cardiac arrests across 3 countries. He put visual targets on high shelves in hospital rooms, images that could only be seen from above, so that anyone reporting an out-of-body experience could be tested. Almost nobody reported anything, and of the ones who did, not a single verifiable target was ever identified. The evidence for anything happening after death is thin, and every serious researcher in the field will tell you so. That is the honest state of the science. And yet, 2 mammals, 2 continents, 9 years apart, with no coordination between them, produced the same signal in the same 30-second window. And of all the rhythms a dying brain could have chosen, it produced the rhythm of remembering. Nobody predicted that. Nobody asked for it. And nobody, so far, has been able to explain it. A brain with no blood pressure and no oxygen has almost no resources left. Gamma is metabolically expensive. It is one of the most demanding things a brain can do. And that is what it spends its last 30 seconds on. Not on breathing, not on the heart, not on any of the housekeeping it spent a lifetime running in the background. It spends everything it has left on the past. We do not know if anyone is home for it. We only know that the machine was running. Every human being who has ever lived has gone through those 30 seconds. 100 billion people, every one of your ancestors, everyone you have ever loved. And in all of that, exactly one of them happened to be wired to a machine that was recording. Whatever is on the other side of that line, we cannot see it. We have one tape from one damaged brain on one night in Vancouver, and it shows us a mind that did not switch off. It shows us a mind that reached backward. You will find out what it means eventually. Everyone does, and you will have about 30 seconds to think about it.